There is a game being played all around you, in every city, every office, every household in this country, and most people will go their entire lives without ever realizing it exists. I know this because I spent more than 20 years searching for it. I interviewed over 500 of the most successful men and women of my time. I sat across from Andrew Carnegie in his private study. I studied the mind of Henry Ford. I observed Thomas Edison at work in his laboratory. I spoke with men who had built vast fortunes from nothing, and I spoke with men who had lost everything and built it all back again. And after all those years, all those interviews, all those case studies, I arrived at a conclusion that disturbed me. Because the dividing line between those who win in life and those who merely survive was not what anyone expected. It was not talent. It was not education. It was not luck or family money or being born in the right place at the right time. It was a set of invisible rules, 9 of them to be precise. Rules that operate beneath the surface of everyday life with the same certainty as the law of gravity. Rules that no school teaches and no employer explains. Rules that most parents cannot pass along to their children because most parents were never taught them either. Today, I am going to share all 9 with you, but I must be honest with you before we begin. Some of what you are about to hear will challenge you. These rules do not merely explain why some people rise. They explain, with uncomfortable precision, why most people remain exactly where they are. And if you are willing to listen honestly, you may see yourself reflected in truths you have been avoiding for years. Do not be afraid of that reflection. I have learned that recognition, even painful recognition, is always the first step toward change. The people who changed their lives most dramatically during my years of research were not the ones who had the easiest start. They were the ones who finally saw themselves clearly and refused to look away. Let us begin. And let us begin with the rule I consider most foundational of all. Every great fortune, every lasting achievement I ever documented began the same way. Not with a plan, not with capital, not with connections. It began with a moment of decision. This is the first invisible rule. Winners decide before they are ready. I want you to understand how profoundly this separates the successful from the unsuccessful. The average person believes that readiness comes first and decision comes second. They think they must gather enough knowledge, enough money, enough confidence, enough certainty before they commit to a course of action. And so they wait, they prepare, they deliberate, they discuss. And while they are doing all of this, while they are waiting for the perfect conditions that never arrive, the winner has already moved. I saw this principle at work in the life of Edwin Barnes, who arrived at Thomas Edison's laboratory with nothing but a burning decision. He did not have a plan. He did not have money for a return train ticket. He had no idea how he would achieve what he wanted. But he had decided with his entire mind, with no reservation whatsoever, that he would work alongside Edison. And that decision, made before any reasonable person would have called him ready, set into motion a chain of events that transformed his life completely. This is what I call definiteness of purpose combined with burning desire. When you decide with finality, when you commit so completely that retreat becomes unthinkable, something shifts in the way the world responds to you. Obstacles that seemed insurmountable begin to reveal openings, people who can help you appear almost as though summoned. Your own mind, given a clear and definite target, begins working on solutions even while you sleep. But here is what most people never grasp. A decision made with reservation is no decision at all. It is a preference, a wish, and wishes carry no power. I have met thousands of people who wished for wealth, wished for a better life, wished things would improve. But wishing and deciding are as different as a breeze and a hurricane. One moves nothing. The other reshapes everything in its path. If you have been waiting to feel ready, I want you to consider the possibility that readiness is not something you wait for. It is something that forms after the decision has been made. The commitment comes first. The capability follows. I have never seen it work the other way around. Now, the second invisible rule is related, but it takes place in a territory most people never think to examine. I have always believed that the human mind is the most powerful force available to any individual, more powerful than money, more powerful than connections, more powerful than any external circumstance. And yet, in all my years of research, I found that the vast majority of people treat this extraordinary instrument with astonishing carelessness. Winners guard what enters their mind. Let me explain what I mean by this. The subconscious mind, that deeper part of you that operates below your everyday awareness, does not evaluate what it receives. It does not distinguish between thoughts that serve you and thoughts that destroy you. It simply accepts whatever impressions are repeated most often with the most emotion, and then it goes to work translating those impressions into your physical reality. I prove this through hundreds of case studies. Feed the subconscious mind images of poverty, fear, and limitation, and it will faithfully guide you toward poverty, fear, and limitation. Feed it images of abundance, purpose, and achievement, and it will guide you there with equal obedience. Now consider what most people feed their minds every single day. They absorb complaints. They participate in conversations about how difficult life is. They surround themselves with voices of cynicism and defeat. They allow the doubts and fears of others to take root in their own thinking without any resistance whatsoever. And then, genuinely puzzled, they wonder why their ambitions wither and die before producing any fruit. The successful men I studied were radically different. They treated the mind like sacred ground. They were deliberate about what they read, whom they listened to, and which thoughts they permitted to linger. They practiced what I call autosuggestion, the conscious, intentional feeding of specific ideas to the subconscious mind through repetition and emotional intensity. Let me describe what this looked like in practice, because I think most people misunderstand it. These men did not simply think pleasant thoughts and hope for the best. They spoke to themselves deliberately with conviction and feeling about who they intended to become and what they intended to accomplish. They did this every single day, morning and evening. They repeated their definite chief aim in words so specific and emotionally charged that the subconscious mind had no choice but to accept the instruction. Over time, something remarkable happened. The ideas they had been planting began expressing themselves automatically through their habits, through their decisions, through a kind of quiet inner certainty that other people could sense but could never quite explain. These men did not simply believe in their success. They had programmed their deeper minds to expect it. And the subconscious mind, once it accepts an expectation, marshals every resource at its disposal to fulfill it. Now, I want to contrast this with what most people do to themselves. They engage in autosuggestion every day too, but they do it unconsciously. They repeat thoughts of worry. They tell themselves they are not smart enough, not lucky enough, not worthy of the things they desire. They rehearse failure in their imaginations over and over, and their subconscious mind, which does not judge, faithfully accepts these instructions and goes to work producing exactly the outcomes they fear most. Guard your mind the way you would guard a vault full of gold, because your mind is worth infinitely more than any vault. If you do not take deliberate control of what enters it, the world will fill it for you. And I can assure you, from decades of careful observation, the world will fill it with exactly the kind of material that keeps people poor, afraid, and small. What I'm about to share next may be the principle most people resist, and that resistance, as you will see, is itself part of the problem. During my research, I asked Andrew Carnegie what he considered the single greatest advantage he possessed. His answer surprised me. He did not mention his intelligence. He did not point to any particular skill. He told me that if every dollar he had were taken away, he could rebuild his fortune within 5 years. And the reason was not any quality he possessed individually. It was the quality of the minds he had assembled around him. That conversation gave birth to what I came to call the mastermind principle. And it is the third invisible rule. Winners use other people's minds. I do not mean this in any manipulative sense. I mean that no single mind, however brilliant, contains within itself everything needed to build something truly great. The person who tries to accomplish everything alone is not demonstrating strength. They are demonstrating ignorance of one of the most powerful forces available in the pursuit of achievement. When two or more minds come together in a spirit of harmony, working toward a clearly defined purpose, something emerges that is greater than anything those minds could produce separately. I have observed it too many times to doubt it. Ideas appear that no individual in the group could have generated alone. Solutions materialize as though drawn from some invisible reservoir. Each person's weakness is compensated by another's strength, and the combined intelligence of the alliance operates at a level that defies simple arithmetic. And yet, what do most people do? They struggle in isolation. They let pride prevent them from seeking counsel. They fear that asking for help reveals inadequacy. They surround themselves with agreeable people who never challenge them, rather than seeking sharp minds who will expose their blind spots and push them beyond their current limits. I want to be very direct with you. If you are attempting to build a fortune or a legacy entirely on your own effort, you are working against one of the most fundamental laws of achievement I ever uncovered. Individual effort, however intense, always has a ceiling. Collective intelligence, properly organized and harmoniously directed, does not. But I must add a critical detail that most people overlook. The mastermind is not simply a group of friends. It is not a casual association of people who happen to like each other. The harmony I speak of is essential. If even one member of the alliance carries jealousy or selfish motives or a competing agenda, the entire chemistry is poisoned. I have seen this happen. I have seen promising alliances disintegrate because one person's hidden resentment introduced a discord that slowly spread through the group like a crack through glass. Choose your allies not only for their ability, but for their character. Look for people whose ambition lifts others rather than threatening them. Look for people who celebrate your progress as genuinely as they celebrate their own. That combination, competence and goodwill, working together in true harmony, is what produces the extraordinary results I described. Without both elements, you have a committee, not a mastermind, and committees accomplish very little. The alliances you build or fail to build will determine the scale of what you accomplish. I have never seen an exception to this in all my years of study. Now, the fourth invisible rule is one I watched destroy more promising careers, more capable minds, more genuine potential than perhaps any other single factor. Here is a question I want you to answer honestly. When was the last time you deliberately sought out something that frightened you? When was the last time you chose the harder path? Not because circumstances forced you, but because you understood that the harder path was the one that led somewhere worth going. Winners make friends with discomfort. I came to this conclusion reluctantly. I did not want it to be true, but the evidence was overwhelming. Every man and woman I studied who achieved lasting success had cultivated a relationship with difficulty that was fundamentally different from the one most people maintain. They did not merely tolerate discomfort when it found them. They pursued it. They understood that growth and ease cannot occupy the same space at the same time, and they chose growth. I watched the opposite pattern destroy fortunes. A man would start an enterprise. The early years were grueling. He was learning, failing, correcting, pushing forward through uncertainty, and he was growing rapidly. Then success would arrive, modest success, enough to bring comfort, and something subtle would happen. He would relax. He would begin protecting what he had rather than reaching for what he could become. He would stop seeking challenges and start avoiding them. And slowly, so gradually he never noticed it happening, his capacity would begin to shrink. His competitors, who had not stopped pushing, would overtake him. By the time he understood what had happened, it was too late. I want you to understand something about discomfort that most people get exactly backward. That knot in your stomach when you face an unfamiliar challenge, that tension you feel when you are about to attempt something beyond your current ability, that is not danger. In nearly every case worth caring about, it is a signal. It is your mind telling you that you are standing at the precise edge where growth occurs. Step back from that edge and you stay the same. Step forward and you expand. Your skills sharpen, your confidence deepens, your capacity to handle larger problems, larger responsibilities, and larger rewards increases. Every retreat from discomfort builds the walls of a cage, and every advance toward it tears those walls down. The choice you make at that edge, again and again, is the choice that shapes your entire life. But there is a companion to courage that most people overlook entirely. It is quieter, less dramatic, and the fifth rule depends on it completely. Let me tell you about a practice I discovered among some of the most disciplined achievers I studied. It was remarkably simple. So simple that when I first encountered it, I almost dismissed it. I am grateful I did not, because it turned out to be one of the most powerful habits separating those who succeed from those who merely intend to. Winners keep score. Every evening, without fail, one man I studied would sit at his desk and record 3 things: what he had accomplished that day toward his chief aim, what he had failed to accomplish, and what he intended to do differently the following day. The entire exercise took 10 minutes. But over months and years, this small act of honest accounting produced something extraordinary. He could detect patterns invisible to others. He could identify weaknesses before they became serious problems. He could recognize which of his efforts were actually producing results and which were producing only the comfortable illusion of progress. This is what most people lack. Not ambition, not effort, but honest measurement. Most people navigate their lives entirely by feeling. They feel like they are doing well, so they assume they are. They feel like they are saving enough, so they never count. They feel like their time is being well spent, so they never examine where it actually goes. And that comfortable self-deception allows the gap between where they believe they are and where they truly stand to widen every single month, every single year, until it becomes an abyss. I have seen self-deception bankrupt men who thought they were prosperous. I have seen it steal decades from people who sincerely believed they were making progress. It is the most expensive habit a human being can develop because it never presents a bill. It simply takes silently, invisibly, until the day you wake up and realize that years have passed and the life you planned for is further away than when you started. Let me put this even more plainly. There are 2 kinds of people in this world: those who measure and those who guess. The man who measures knows when he is drifting off course, while the correction is still small and easy. The man who guesses discovers the drift only after it has carried him miles from his destination, sometimes so far that the journey back seems impossible. I do not care how you keep your accounting, whether it is a ledger, a journal, or a simple page of notes at the end of each day. What matters is the honesty of the practice. What matters is that you sit down regularly and confront the difference between what you intended to do and what you actually did. That gap, however small or large, is the most valuable piece of information available to you because it tells you, without flattery and without excuses, exactly where you stand. Know your numbers, in your finances, in your habits, in your daily progress toward the life you have defined for yourself. A man who does not measure his position cannot correct his course, and a man who cannot correct his course will never arrive where he intends to go. The 6th rule requires a different kind of honesty. It is not about examining yourself, it is about examining everything around you. I want to share an observation that troubled me throughout my research. I met people, many people, who possessed real intelligence, genuine ambition, and a sincere desire to build a better life, and yet they remained stuck year after year, not because of any deficiency within them, but because of where they were. Winners remove themselves from losing environments. I learned that environment exerts a force on the human mind that is almost impossible to resist through willpower alone. The conversations you participate in, the attitudes of the people closest to you, the general atmosphere of the place where you spend most of your waking hours. These things press against your thinking with a slow, constant, relentless pressure, like water against stone. And over time, they shape you, whether you consent to it or not. If you spend your days among people who have surrendered their ambitions, who speak about success with resentment rather than aspiration, who treat your goals as threats rather than inspirations, you will begin to absorb their view of the world. It does not happen all at once. It happens in small increments. A dream you stop mentioning because you are tired of the silence that follows. An idea you stop pursuing because no one around you understands it. A standard you quietly lower because maintaining it feels lonely. Many of the most successful individuals I documented made painful decisions to leave environments that were slowly extinguishing their potential. They left towns that offered no opportunity for the kind of work they wanted to do. They left positions that had become comfortable prisons, well paying enough to discourage leaving, but too limited to allow real growth. Some created distance from people they had known their entire lives, people they genuinely loved, but whose settled despair had become a weight too heavy to carry while trying to climb. These were not cold decisions. I know because I spoke with these men about them, and many described them as among the most difficult choices they ever made. But they made them anyway, because they understood that remaining in a place that was slowly killing their ambition was not loyalty, it was not humility, it was surrender, and the cost of that surrender was not merely their own unfulfilled potential. It was everything they might have built, everyone they might have helped, every contribution they might have made to this world, all of it sacrificed on the altar of not wanting to upset the people around them. I ask you to look honestly at the people who surround you most closely, not with cruelty, but with clarity. Are they growing? Are they striving toward something that demands the best of them? When you mention a new ambition or share a goal that excites you, what happens? Do they lean forward with interest? Or do they change the subject, make a joke at your expense, or meet your enthusiasm with that particular silence that says more than any words could? Your answer will tell you more about the direction of your life than any plan you could ever draft. Because I discovered a truth I cannot overstate. You can have the finest strategy ever conceived, but if your environment opposes your aim, the environment will prevail. It is stronger than intention. It is stronger than discipline. It can only be overcome by leaving it behind. Now, the seventh rule requires patience. And patience, I have found, is the one virtue that ambition struggles most to accept. In all my years of study, across hundreds of cases, I never found a single instance of legitimate overnight success. Not one. What I found, without exception, was years of quiet, unglamorous preparation that the world never witnessed. The public saw only the result. They never saw the process. And because they could not see the process, they assumed it did not exist. Winners think in years, not in days. Henry Ford did not emerge fully formed as a titan of industry. He failed. He exhausted his backers. He was written off. He rebuilt. He adjusted. He endured years of setback and obscurity. And when the world finally took notice, people spoke of his success as though it had appeared from nowhere. They did not understand that they were looking at the harvest. The planting had happened years before in silence when no one was watching. This misunderstanding is one of the great destroyers of ambition. A person begins a worthy endeavor. They work hard. They expect results. And when results do not appear quickly, when weeks turn into months without visible reward, they abandon the effort. They do not realize that they are behaving like a farmer who plants seed on Monday and digs it up on Thursday to see if anything is growing. The seed needed more time, but their impatience killed it. I developed what I call the law of accumulation through my research. Small, purposeful, consistent actions, compounded over months and years, produce results that no single dramatic effort could ever match. The person who writes one page every day holds a completed manuscript within a year. The person who saves a modest sum each week builds a fortune over decades. The person who studies their craft for 1 hour each morning masters it within a few years. The process is not exciting. It is not glamorous. Nobody writes newspaper articles about it while it is happening. But it is unstoppable. It is as certain as the rising of the tide. And here is the part that the impatient person never sees. The compounding does not happen at a steady rate. For the first months, sometimes even the first years, progress feels painfully slow. You work and seem to have little to show for it. This is the period where nearly everyone quits. They look at their modest results and conclude the effort is not working. What they do not understand is that they are standing at the base of an upward curve. The results are compounding beneath the surface, exactly as they should be, but the visible evidence has not yet broken through. The person who persists through this invisible phase will eventually reach a point where the results begin to multiply faster than they ever expected. But that point only reveals itself to those who refuse to stop. If you are unable to think in terms of years, you will forever be outmaneuvered by someone who can. While you abandon one effort after another in search of the quick reward, they are building something deep and permanent beneath the surface. And by the time their results become visible, the distance between you and them will be too great for any shortcut to close. The eighth rule is something I rarely hear discussed, but I consider it among the most important discoveries of my career. I want to tell you something that may seem contradictory. The men and women I studied who achieved the greatest and most durable success were not the ones who avoided failure most skillfully. They were the ones who studied it most carefully. Winners study failure more than they study success. This was true of Edison, who did not simply endure thousands of failed experiments. He cataloged them. He examined each one as a scientist examines evidence, not with shame, but with curiosity. Each unsuccessful attempt eliminated a possibility and narrowed the path toward the solution. He did not view failure as the opposite of success. He understood it as an essential stage in the journey toward success, a stage that could not be skipped. But the insight goes deeper than method. I observed something in the men who had lost fortunes and rebuilt them that I never observed in those who had only experienced winning. The men who had been through catastrophic failure possessed a quality of judgment, a depth of wisdom that success alone could not have produced. Their first fortunes were built on ambition and energy. Their second fortunes were built on something far more durable. They were built on the understanding of what can go wrong and how and why. Success, untempered by failure, can be dangerous. It breeds overconfidence. It creates the illusion that your judgment is infallible, that everything you touch will naturally prosper. And that illusion, comfortable as it is the quiet prelude to disaster. Failure corrects this. It humbles you without destroying you if you allow it to do its work. It sharpens the very faculties that success tends to dull. It teaches you where the hidden dangers lie along the road, dangers you would never have discovered through any amount of theorizing or planning. I want you to notice something else about the men who studied their failures carefully. They did not become timid. That is not what I am describing. They did not become afraid to act. Quite the opposite. They became bolder because they had mapped the territory. They knew where the pitfalls were. A man who has fallen into a trap and climbed out of it is far more capable than a man who has only read about traps in a book. The first man carries the knowledge in his body, in his instincts, in his bones. The second man carries it only in his head, and head knowledge without the tempering fire of experience is brittle. It breaks at the first real test. If failure frightens you so deeply that you organize your entire life around avoiding it, then you are also refusing the one teacher capable of giving you the wisdom to sustain lasting achievement. And that refusal carries a cost far greater than any single defeat ever could. We come now to the ninth and final rule. I have placed it last deliberately because in my estimation, it is the rule upon which all the others ultimately rest. I have studied wealthy men, and I have studied poor men, and I will tell you the most revealing difference I found between them. It was not in their circumstances. It was not in their education. It was not even in their intelligence. It was in how they spent an ordinary day. Winners align their daily habits with their deepest purpose. I call it definiteness of purpose, and it is not a vague feeling of wanting something better. It is a clear, vivid, precisely defined picture of what you intend to accomplish with your life. So clear that you could describe it to a stranger in exact detail. So vivid that you can see it when you close your eyes and feel it in your chest when you are quiet. Most people have never defined their purpose with this kind of precision. They carry wishes, not plans, hopes, not targets, and so they drift from one year to the next, from one opportunity to the next, reacting to circumstances rather than creating them. But even among those who have defined their purpose clearly, I discovered a fatal gap, the gap between purpose and daily practice. A man tells himself he desires financial independence, an admirable aim. But then observe how he spends his hours. Does he rise early to study, to plan, to take deliberate action toward that aim? Or does he spend his evenings the same way he spent them last year and the year before that, doing nothing that moves him 1 inch closer to the life he claims to want? I want to share something I learned that may be difficult to hear. Your daily habits are the most honest record of your true priorities, not the priorities you announce to others, not the goals you write down and place in a drawer. Your real priorities, the ones revealed by what you actually do with your hours when no one is forcing your hand and nothing is at stake but your own future. If you say you want wealth, but your evenings are consumed by idle distractions, then your true priority is comfort, not wealth. If you say you want to build something great, but you cannot sacrifice a single hour of leisure for preparation, then your true priority is ease, not greatness. This is not a judgment against you. It is a mirror, and the purpose of a mirror is not to punish. It is to reveal the truth clearly enough that you can finally act on it. The men and women who built lasting achievement did not possess more hours in their day than you have in yours. They had the same 24, but they organized those hours around their definite purpose with a discipline that compounded day after day, week after week, year after year, until the accumulated results became impossible for the world to ignore. Organized planning applied to ordinary days. That is the mechanism behind every fortune I studied. Not brilliance, not luck. Not some mysterious gift bestowed upon the chosen few. The disciplined, purposeful use of time, governed by a clearly defined aim, executed through daily habits that are designed rather than inherited. I cannot overstate how available this is to you. You do not need anyone's permission to redesign your day. You do not need money. You do not need to wait for Monday or the first of the month or the new year. You can begin this evening. Sit down. Write your definite purpose in clear, specific language. Then examine your daily schedule with ruthless honesty. Identify every hour that is not contributing to your purpose, and replace it 1 hour at a time if necessary with action that does. This is not a dramatic transformation. It is a quiet revolution, and it is the single most powerful change any person can make because it affects everything: your finances, your relationships, your health, your confidence, your trajectory. All of it flows from how you spend the hours of an ordinary day. Master your days, and you will master your life. I have never seen it fail. Now let me draw these 9 rules together because they do not operate in isolation. They form a single living system in which each principle strengthens and sustains the others. You decide before you are ready, and that decision activates everything that follows. You guard your mind, and that protection ensures your energy and clarity are never stolen by forces that oppose your purpose. You assemble a mastermind alliance, and the combined intelligence of that alliance multiplies your power beyond anything you could achieve alone. You embrace discomfort as the price of expansion, and your capacity grows in proportion to your willingness to pay it. You keep honest score, and that discipline prevents the slow, silent drift of self-deception from carrying you off course. You leave environments that weaken your resolve, and that separation frees you from invisible chains you may not even realize you were wearing. You think in years, and that patience grants you an advantage that impatient people can never overcome. You study failure with the same care others reserve only for success, and the wisdom you gain protects you from the catastrophic mistakes that destroy unprepared minds. And you align your daily habits with your deepest and most clearly defined purpose, and that alignment transforms ordinary days into the raw material of an extraordinary life. This is what winners do, not when inspiration strikes, not when circumstances are favorable. Every day, without exception. And I want to leave you with this thought. None of these 9 rules require extraordinary intelligence. None require wealth to begin practicing. None require permission from any other person. They require only one thing, the very thing we discussed at the start: a decision. A real, unqualified, irrevocable decision to stop living by rules that produce nothing and to begin living by the rules that have always governed achievement in every era, in every field, in every corner of this world. The invisible game has been playing itself around you your entire life. These 9 rules have been operating whether you knew about them or not. The only question that remains is whether you will go on playing without understanding them, or whether you will master them and finally begin to claim the life that has been waiting for you all along. The answer, as it has always been, is entirely in your hands. And if you have stayed with me this far, I believe you already know what your answer is. If this lesson helped you, subscribe to Napoleon Mindset for more timeless principles of success and wealth.